So another early period in Jung's life and early work, which was influential, was whenever he was writing his dissertation, which was published around 1903 or 1902, and that was entitled The Psychology and Pathology of So-Called Occult Phenomena. So Jung was very interested early on in the parapsychological, the paranormal, and occult phenomena, and he wanted to study these things empirically, scientifically, and understand the psychology behind them. So whenever he was writing his dissertation, he was observing his young cousin, who was a medium, and her name was Helen Prizework, and she would have mediumistic sessions that Jung would attend, where she would communicate with spirits and personify deceased members of her family and acquaintances, claiming that they were speaking through her. At times, her language would change, and she would speak perfect High German instead of her customary dialect. During later sessions, she began to say her name was Ivens, and her character was completely different from her regular personality. So here's a quote from Ellenberger talking about this time period. So Ivens said that she journeyed to the planet Mars, saw its canals and flying machines, and visited the inhabitants of the stars and spirit world. She was instructed by clear spirits, and she herself instructed black spirits. Other spirits could be classified into two groups. Some were rather dour and others exuberant. Jung noticed these characteristics corresponded with two aspects of the young medium's personality, between which she constantly oscillated. Two features in the medium story struck Jung. First, her ability, when in a mediumistic state, to accomplish performances that were far superior to those she was capable of in her conscious state. Second, the contrast between the personality of Ivens, who was serious, poised, and thoughtful, and the medium's unbalanced habitual personality. Jung concluded that Ivens was none other than the adult personality of the medium that was in the process of elaboration in her unconscious. The patient's psychic growth was impeded by psychological and social obstacles, and the mediumistic career was a means resorted to by the unconscious to overcome these obstacles. So we can see Jung's thoughts and ideas forming around these early concepts that I talked about earlier in the presentation. So the psyche having a telos, a goal, an aim of growth, of evolution and development of the personality, and libido or psychic energy being harnessed either in the form of progression or regression. So it says that Jung's cousin's growth was impeded, progression was stopped, and so the only avenue left was for her libido to be focused internally, to spur some sort of change within the unconscious. So that's what the mediumistic career was about. It was about finding an avenue to allow further development of the personality to take place. And I'll get into more details about that on the next slide. But an interesting side note is that whenever Jung saw her several years later, she had a dressmaker's shop with her sister and actually claimed that she had forgotten everything related to the sessions. So if we put together Jung's ideas and concepts, we can say that Helen was going through a transition into adulthood that was impeded, aka unsuccessful. So something was preventing her from taking a developmental step, from adapting, or from maturing. And because of this, her libido was blocked from progression or adjustment to the external world due to psychological and social reasons. So this stagnation, the stagnation of the personality and of the libido, allowed regression to occur. And then her psychic energy was focused on unconscious content, complexes, and dilemmas as her psyche was trying to reorganize itself and create avenues for her to develop her personality via her mediumship. So it was the psyche's attempt trying to find an outlet to work through this process of the development that it was in. It was trying to upgrade itself and trying to work things out itself. So being a medium gave her the social standing she was needing and allowed her a platform which to achieve this psychic transformation. So we can say that the clear and black spirits she encountered were archetypal images or forms that allowed her to connect with certain psychic processes that were happening internally. So they were the expression of these psychic processes that were happening internally. The dour and exuberant spirits that represented the two main sides of her personality embodied complexes of her personality and may have been representing the psyche's attempt at integrating both into a more developed personality. So we can see that there is an attempt at renewal and reorganization going on during a process like this. It isn't random. There is something the psyche is attempting to accomplish. So Jung believed that it was reduced ego strength that allows this unconscious material to stream into consciousness, to flood consciousness. And your ego strength is essentially your sense of self, having a stable sense of self throughout time, a stable knowing of who you are, being able to regulate your emotions, to handle difficulties and challenges in life, to be resilient, to have a sense of belonging or purpose, to have a firm grip on reality. And whenever this loosens or breaks down, this is what allows unconscious content, unconscious energies to stream into consciousness to overpower the conscious mind. Because typically, your conscious mind, your ego can keep this unconscious content at bay. So if we think of dreaming, for instance, whenever you are sleeping, your conscious mind, your ego is totally relaxed. And it is this that allows your unconscious to completely take over and produce its own reality to produce the dream. So you can think of psychosis as a type of waking dream where the unconscious is the main force that is cultivating their sense of reality moment to moment. So if we think about this idea of the reduction of ego strength, if we go back to the example we were just getting into regarding Jung's cousin, Helen, and her experience, we talked about there being an impairment or a failure in her ability to adapt to the demands of life for whatever reason that was. Unable to reach the developmental steps she was needing to reach, unable to adjust socially. Because of this, her progression was stopped. When this progression is stopped, her ego strength begins to loosen, to break down. She starts losing stability in her sense of self. And this is what allows the unconscious to take over, to create this other personality of Ivan's, this medium that then began to run the show. And in Jung's approach, whenever someone develops schizophrenia, it is typically initiated at a time when their ego strength becomes reduced because of their inability to adjust to the demands of life. Or maybe someone never developed a stable sense of self, never developed a strong ego. So they are vulnerable from a young age at being possessed by the unconscious. And Jung did think that a person could be and does at times become possessed by unconscious and archetypal energies and complexes. So this idea of having a reduced ego strength is very important when it comes to understanding psychosis.